At some point on our spiritual journey, we may feel that life isn't working and success isn't what we hoped it would be. And we begin to wonder, is my ego running my life? And if it is, what does my soul want? And how can I course correct to get on my soul's plan? We may realize that we have to relinquish, not give up, but relinquish to a higher power. And no, I'm not talking about that higher power. I'm suggesting that our soul has a scripted plan and it's aching for us to just listen. If you've ever wondered, what does my soul want? If you've ever wanted to become more aligned with your soul self and destiny's plan that may already be in place, then this episode is for you. This podcast is all about helping you with your spiritual growth so you can overcome obstacles and manifest your destiny to crystallize all things good, basically to have success on life's journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. So let's get started. Hi there, and welcome. My name is Remy, like Do Re Mi. I'm a best-selling author and creator of the Get Unstuck Revolution. I help extraordinary women just like you dissolve the obstacles in your path so you can bring success to you. Now let's get started with today's video. Okay, let me jump off the screen here and switch to my laptop. If you've ever wondered, what does my soul want? Well, you aren't alone. I have people tell me all the time that they know logically what they want, but they also crave a deeper meaning out of life. And they ask me, I wonder what my soul wants for my success. Well, today's episode is for you. If you wonder, do I have a life plan that's already scripted? How can I get access to this plan? And is there a universal plan that we pretty much all have or that we're all a part of? All right. Well, at some point on our spiritual journey, we may feel that life isn't working and success isn't what we hoped it would be. And we begin to wonder, is my ego self running my life? And if it is, what does my soul want? And how can I course correct this journey that I'm on? How can I bypass ego and access this greater knowingness? Well, I'm going to pose some questions today, not to create a spiritual debate and certainly not to offend anyone. So, as we go through some concepts, simply see what fits for you and throw out the rest. Okay, here's the first concept. We have a unique soul, and our soul is on a unique journey to reconnect us with who we really are at our core. Our soul is trying to reconnect us with who we really are. So our soul scripted a plan before we even got here, and the universe is supporting these experiences, good and bad, and honoring what we wish to experience for our own soul's growth. And so this is the first concept that I'd like you to consider. If you don't agree, that's fine. Just take from this what you will as it fits into your own belief system. All right, so we are part of a perfect vibrational blueprint, a blueprint that our soul scripted before we got here to connect us with who we really are. Now, we've talked about this before and how one of the things that we most want to connect with is that all is already given. All is already given, both good and bad. We can experience things whichever way we choose for our own soul's growth. Ultimately, though, we will evolve to that place where we begin to choose in every moment of every day to choose the good that's already given, to choose the good that's already given, and not allow our ego to run us into the ground anymore. Okay, so let's assume that we have access to this perfect vibrational blueprint that our soul scripted for us before we ever got here. And here comes the next concept. Our soul contract, the script we wrote before coming here for the experiences that we've wanted to experience, is not subject to free will and cannot be broken because the goal of our soul contract exceeds the wants and desires of our ego. Our contract is not subject to free will because the soul contract bypasses the desires of our ego. Now, I'm not here to debate free will. We did an episode called Destiny versus Free Will. So if you're interested in how free will works and whether destiny trumps free will, well, go look for that episode. It was called Destiny versus Free Will. Destiny versus free will. But for today's episode, what's important for me is realizing that our soul scripted our experiences before we came here. And this script bypasses the desires of ego. Oh, we may stumble and trip, but we'll eventually get to the place where we tune in to this plan that's already been scripted. So, wouldn't it be valuable to know what's in our soul contract and what this greater knowingness that we call our soul wants for us? Well, to discover this, we need to transcend the battle between our ego self and our soul self. Now, there's a lot of talk out there about the ego versus the soul. I've heard extreme statements like ego wants you to die. But my favorite, and the one I fall back to most often, is that ego is there to show us the difference between what we want and what we don't want so that we can choose. The minute we're experiencing something that we don't want, in that moment, we're seeing what we do want. So we can transcend ego's negative thoughts and choose an easier experience. We want to transcend ego's negative thoughts and choose an easier experience. Ego gives us the ability to choose by triggering a lot of pain, unprocessed trauma, maybe even memories of abuse. The part of our soul contract is to transcend the pain brought about by ego. All right. So we can choose to stay in the angst and struggle and uncertainties, or we can choose to create an easier experience and a new reality. The emotions and pain being triggered are often subconscious childhood or maybe past life wounds that are being reactivated in order to heal them once and for all. But what does that mean to heal them? How do you do that? Well, we have a choice whether to go down that path of being committed and devoted to ego suffering, and we also have the choice toward an easier path. Realizing that we have the choice toward an easier path is immensely important because our healing, is nothing more than a shift in perspective. Okay. Now, one of our deepest desires on this journey is that we simply don't want to be stuck. That's one of our deepest desires, to not be stuck, but to be moving forward. We want to know what our soul's plan is so we can just move forward. And this is why you hear me say so often that it's never the situation, but our energy about it that becomes stuck in negative ego thinking. If we get stuck there, then it becomes really difficult to align with our soul's plan. It becomes really difficult to know what path we're supposed to be on. All right. So now that we've laid some groundwork for today's episode, number one, our soul scripted a plan before we even got here. Number two, our soul contract cannot be broken, not even by free will, but we can certainly begin to align with this plan by moving away from ego thinking, which is moving away from the free will that may trip us up. And number three, healing is simply a shift in perspective. We can look for the blessings, and this simple shift can help us align with what our soul has scripted for us, because our soul would like us to hold a different perspective than the perspective our ego would hold. Okay, so I would like to introduce 7 simple stages to align us with our soul's plan. Because if you're like me, then there have been times where you've wondered, what does my soul want? And how can I course correct this journey I'm on to better align with that? And so, since the soul works to bring up the subconscious wounding that needs to be addressed, we each have our own unique journey. And our soul has scripted the most perfect scenarios that will get us into that higher state of consciousness and oneness with all that is. And so here comes stage one. I want you to be looking for where you are on your journey, which one of these stages is a good fit for you. And I'm putting these up on the screen for you. And here comes stage one. Stage one is awakening to possibilities. We've somehow gotten a glimpse of heaven, and now we're thirsty for more in this stage. Maybe we've bumped into our passion. Maybe others are seeing it on us. Maybe we're feeling growth spurts like the lobster breaking out of its exoskeleton. But we know we're destined for more. We sense there's a greatness within us, and we believe we're here for a purpose. In this stage, our spiritual energy increases, but now we begin to have more doubts and questions than ever before. And we're asking the big questions. We're challenging life and the unprocessed subconscious traumas that are stored in our vibrational field are being triggered in this stage. These traumas need to be healed so that we have the emotional space for something bigger and better, so that we can answer the calling that's been placed on our soul. And at times in this stage, we're on an emotional roller coaster, screaming to the heavens, "What do you want from me?" And other times we're angry that we can't see through our blacked out glasses. We can't quite put our finger on what our purpose is. And sometimes we might think that we're psychotic for being in this emotional no man's land, unable to see with clarity. But we are awakening. The important thing in this stage is that we begin to see the difference between what the ego wants and what the soul wants. There's a lot of talk about vision boards and manifesting and being deliberate creators, but what we're looking for here in this stage is to escape the goal setting and vision mapping from ego's perspective and to begin to align with what the soul is calling us to do. All right, here comes stage two. And stage two, I like to call the trouble with ego. Like most human beings operating from ego thinking, we try to get our needs met from the outer world when this journey has come to teach us that everything we seek is inside. Ego would have us meet our needs in the outer world, but now in this stage, it's time to align with what our soul wants for us. We are creative vibrational beings who can use positive energies to create what we want and bring it into physical manifestation. Part of this process is to allow our manifestations to materialize and not get stuck in ego's negative vibrations that block them. And this is the trouble with ego thinking, it messes with our vibration. So, when we aren't getting what we want in life, the first place to investigate is our own thought patterns because the trouble with ego is it's very negative in its thought patterns. And our soul wants one thing: to stop ego's negative chitter chatter and change our vibration. Our soul wants us in a higher frequency of resilience and joy and expression and connection. And from there, we can manifest those things that will fulfill our heart and, yes, fulfill our soul. Okay, now here comes stage three. And in stage three, this is where we're shifting out of ego's paradigm. Our ego knows all of our weak spots and is poking its finger in each one of them to help us become aware of what we've been trying to hide from ourselves for lifetimes and lifetimes, that we are a creative vibrational being able to transform challenges into blessings through our positive energies. A shifting out of ego's paradigm in this stage, in which we believe that only what we can see is real. We perceive with our five senses and we think that that's real, meaning that we have to become aware of what's held in our vibrational escrow, the pool of possibilities of who we are to become and what we're here to bring to fruition. Trusting our greater knowingness becomes our next step here in this stage because it's often the most difficult, because it's scary to follow our inner guidance when it defies all logic. We've been taught to trust what we see in the physical. In other words, we've been taught to give away our power. Now, most people get stuck right here in between stage three and the next stage, stage four, which is why you hear me say in every single episode that it's never the situation, but our energy that's become stuck. Ego gets a hold of us, and it can be quite a process to choose a different paradigm. So, this is where most people get stuck, right here between stage three and the next stage four. This is where we are spinning our wheels. This is where success seems so elusive. This is where people show up at my workshops and they say, "I've tried everything and nothing ever changes." Well, they've become stuck in ego's paradigm. So, this healing, this shift in perspective from the ego's paradigm into higher frequency thought patterns, is what gives us access to the next stages of growth where our soul wants us to break free and become who we're meant to be. So, let's talk about this next stage four. And stage four is where we commit to the journey. Now, this is where most people get stuck, right here in between stage three and stage four. Remember, stage three is shifting outside of the hold that ego sometimes has over us and committing to a new paradigm. So, a lot of people slide back to negative thought patterns of blame and frustration. This can be the hard part because ego can be so seductive with all of its mind games. Remember that ego can also be called resistance. And if you're a fan of the law of attraction, the thing about resistance is that it's insidious. Resistance is the enemy within because, in trying to protect us, it prevents us from doing our work toward spiritual growth. And here's the thing, if we're going to commit to our soul's journey, ego knows that we don't need its protection anymore. So it's going to start screaming. You've heard me say it before, ego screams first and it screams the loudest. So, in committing to our journey, we're committing to staying in the higher frequencies and not allowing ego to tempt us back into a devotion to the lower negative thought patterns of frustration and fear. All right. If we can get beyond the stuckness that happens in stage three and four, then here comes stage five. And this is the healing stage. Remember, healing is simply a shift in perspective. And this was a concept that we started with today, one of our first insights. If we can break through stage three, where we're shifting outside of ego thinking, and if we can break through stage four, where we're making a solid commitment to higher frequency thoughts, then we can slide into this next stage of healing. And remember, healing is nothing more than a shift in perspective. We may face some demons in this stage. Now, the problem is not that we're wounded or not whole. The problem is that at a subconscious level, we've come to believe that we are broken and have failed to be able to see the truth of who we are. It's these subconscious fears and false beliefs that are being played out in our current reality. But it's also an attempt to help us remember who we really are at the soul level, not who we believe we are based on our experiences or based on ego's insidious lies. So, healing is simply a shift in perspective, a shift out of fear based thinking, a shift from doubts and worries into certainty and purpose, a shift from confusion and overwhelm into grace and appreciation. And this is where some of the mantras that we've created in past episodes can come in handy because we're literally repatterning our thoughts. And there's so many affirmations and mantras out there. And of course, I always encourage you to create your own. I'm putting up on the screen here just a couple of my favorites. One is I'm open to possibilities even greater than I've imagined. One is I invite things to unfold to my highest benefit and with the most joy. Another favorite is with grace, I align with divine energy for the most prosperous or the best possible outcomes. These mantras help us to repattern our thoughts. And in this process of healing, it's only a vibrational shift that's necessary. That's all that's ever required of us. And this is where mantras can help us so much. Subconscious fears and false beliefs have created a vibrational density within us. And so we're repatterning that. The vibrational field around us is filled up with the equivalent of energetic cement boots that are weighing us down because they're filled with unprocessed trauma and spiritual injury and emotions that need to be found and released so that we can raise our vibrational frequency. But sometimes we can't find them. And so it's easier often to just repattern our thoughts. All right. Now, I've never personally been on a hot air balloon because it freaks me out a little bit. But imagine a hot air balloon. If we want to go higher, we need to throw off the ballast because this dead weight will otherwise keep dragging us down no matter how much we increase the hot air to go higher. So, what we're doing here is we're removing the darkness, we're removing the negative emotions and perspectives that no longer serve us so that we can bring in the light completely. So, I'm a huge fan of simply creating a new vibrational shift. This repatterning for me comes easiest by using affirmations and mantras. Since we know that at a basic level, only a vibrational shift in our frequency is needed, well, this idea of using mantras is still one of my favorite techniques. As always, I encourage you to write some of your own as you begin to repattern your thoughts. All right, we ready for stage six? Here we go, and that is to be open to your soul's plan. In order to reach success, however we define it, we must be open to our soul and its plan for us. We must be open to this greater knowingness. The nature of the ego is that it thinks it's in charge and it's running the show. But of course, it's our soul who has scripted everything it wants to experience in this lifetime. The ego knows nothing of the soul plan that's already been scripted, nor does the ego understand the complex soul agreements made with others to support our experiences. The ego responds to our desires with fear, and it uses control, force, and manipulation to get what it wants, whether that serves our highest good or not. This battle between our ego self and our soul self, when we're stuck in a situation, happens when the ego doesn't get the results it wants. It throws a tantrum to get its desires met by force, which of course never works. And then the ego wants to give up because all seems lost. And then usually, this is when it tells us about disappointment and where we are in the process and how life doesn't work and everything's going wrong. And we're left with an unfulfilled purpose or passion in life, and sometimes feeling like a failure. It doesn't matter if we try to force our way by taking massive action. It doesn't matter if we're trying to do all kinds of energy work to get what we want. We have to open up to the soul's plan because nothing is going to work until we do. Our soul has scripted a plan, and that's what we want to align with. So the question is, how do we do that when we don't even know what the plan is? Well, this is everything we talk about in every single episode here. We transform these challenges into blessings simply by stepping into our most natural positive energies. We drop the resistance. We drop the ego thinking that keeps us spinning in circles with frustration and annoyance, maybe grief, and all these other negative emotions. It's opening up to the soul and trusting its plan that gets us to the next stage of our journey. The only way to get there is by trusting the plan that's in place, even if we can't see it. And this means letting go of our need to control and our need to micromanage and trust that everything is taken care of. This is easy for our soul self because it feels so connected to the universe, but it terrifies our ego self, which believes that we're separate and aren't taken care of at all. So, this is going to take some trust in our soul and our soul's plan. All right, here comes the next stage, and that is remembering who we truly are. We talk about this one every single week. We are a creative vibrational being who can transform challenges into blessings with our positive energies. It's our hidden power. And the idea of taking this out of the abstract and actually living and aligning and directing positive energies toward the best possible outcomes, even if we don't know what they are yet, well, this is what our goal is. Now, often the previous stage of opening up to our soul's plan only comes after sheer exhaustion and a realization that we cannot force our life's journey to be what our ego wants it to be. It will simply not budge as long as ego thinking is involved. We can meditate until the cows come home. We can take massive action. We can sit through hours and hours of therapy. But until our soul self has achieved what it came here to accomplish, to overcome ego thinking and align with these higher frequencies where we recover our abilities as a creator, nothing seems to change. Let me say that again. Until our soul self has achieved what it came here to accomplish, to overcome ego thinking and align with these higher frequencies where we recover our abilities as a co creator, well, nothing seems to change. When we open up and let go of control, a miraculous thing begins to happen. We get access to our core blocks that have been tripping us up. And when this happens, we will be shown all the subconscious fears and false beliefs that were keeping us from seeing who we really are at a core soul level and fully stepping into our power. But we have to sometimes do that gut wrenching work that gets us there, or at least that's what we think. Once we commit to stepping away from ego thinking, though, we can stop circling around in our own deeply programmed BS. Remember, The ego needs to define how special it is through separateness, but our soul knows its true place in relation to everything. When we transcend the inner battle of our ego self and our soul self, when we no longer respond and react to anything that happens in the outside world, we become one with the path that our soul intended for us. In other words, it's through these positive energies like resilience and gratitude and compassion that we find our way onto the path our soul intended for us. Well, we covered a lot today, didn't we? And as always, we tend to end up at the very same place every week, using our positive energies and thoughts to move up to a higher frequency as we transcend our soul self. As we empower ourselves towards self expression and who we are at our core without ego's negative thoughts and emotions that can drain us, well, we're choosing a higher frequency, higher and better thoughts, because our choice of frequency, our choice of more positive emotions, changes the course of our journey. So, reflecting back on everything we covered today, how can you apply what you've learned? Of the 7 stages that we talked about, were you able to find yourself and where you are on your journey? Were you stuck right there between stages 3 and 4? Or have you moved on through some of the other stages? Hmm. Well, I hope this helps you as you're using the powers of alchemy to transform challenges and obstacles into positive new successes. This podcast is all about helping you have success on your spiritual growth journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. But if you still can't get your head around what's got you stuck in life or in business, you can tell me about it. You can send me your questions to questions at unlockyourhiddenpower.com. Or you may not know that you can get a free copy of my latest book at unlockyourhiddenpower.com. Well, thanks for joining me today, and I'm wishing you a life filled with all the alchemy you need to bring success to you. Feel free to share this video with anyone you know who's feeling stuck, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.